To go ahead and start recording. There we go. And we'll just dive right in. Hello, everyone who is here today or watching later. Thank you so much for attending this webinar on navigating the fourth trimester, which is a hugely important topic. My name is Stephanie. I am the founder and owner of Marble Wellness, which is a mental health therapy practice co-located in St. Louis and Chicago. Moms are the heart of what we do. It's how we started. We have since expanded to also serve kids, teens, adults with a variety of presenting problems that are bringing them to therapy, but also serving families and couples. So we've been doing these webinars just to get information out to our community in an easily accessible way and just be able to talk about a variety of topics that mean a lot to our therapists, mean a lot to the people who call a lot of times looking for services and to get started. So I am here today with our therapist, Cara. She's on our maternal mental health team, and a doula partner of ours, Kathleen, because this is really an area of expertise that they both have and feel passionately about and are wanting to share with you guys today, or like I said, whenever you're listening. So I will mostly shut up today. I will probably have questions and interrupt. Those of you who are attending live, feel free to drop anything in the chat at any point, and I will, even if it's a comment, not a question, and I will get that answered and just kind of stated out there to our panelists. But other than that, I will let them take it away. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen really quickly so I can get the PowerPoint that they made up here. Okay, here we go. Cara and Kathleen, it's all yours.
Kathleen, you want to start, babe, or you want me to?
Sure. Well, maybe if we could just bump ahead in the slides a little bit, Stephanie.
Yep. So that one we already went over, and here we are.
And then, yeah, we can jump right in here. So hi, everyone. So glad to be sharing some information with you today. And we just want to share right off the top that it is not our intention to scare anyone today. Not at all. We just want to be sharing some information, kind of things that we wish we would have known when we were expecting our first babies. And just from the people, the moms that we work with and know personally. We've just found in our professional and personal lives that our society doesn't always do the best job of giving pregnant women the good scoop about what to expect in the birthing and postpartum experience. So we're hoping that today can kind of be like the best friend's guide to what to expect and how to prepare.
Yes, that's perfect.
So just kind of start off with a little bit about managing expectations. Just some categories we'll touch on briefly. Physical recovery after birth, your sleep, identity shift that all new parents seem to experience one way or another. And then again, just in the interest of sharing information and building awareness, Cara's going to talk on some perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, with our overall message just being that there's support out there and we want everyone to feel prepared in case that is part of your experience. So I think we can go ahead to our first slide here on physical recovery.
So, which is super fun, right? Like, this is what we all love to talk about.
Yeah, I think this is the one I hear the most in counseling sessions is like, why did no one tell me about this? And I remember growing up with my mom also saying, like, you gain anywhere between 20, 30, 50 pounds, and then a 7-pound baby comes out
of you.
So I'm excited.
And by the way, you can't fit into your jeans on the way home.
Yes. So I'm excited for this slide.
Yeah. So we've kind of mentioned some things here that most new moms do experience, some that you may or may not, and then some things that we hope you don't experience, but we just don't want the first time a possibility comes into your mind to be when you're experiencing that. So again, this is just awareness building, not necessarily a reflection of what every experience looks like, but kind of on the more routine front, that first line of routine soreness, body changes, not feeling like myself. So, even the most straightforward delivery is still a major trauma to your body. And there's going to be some soreness in those hours and days to come. So it may be hard to get in and out of bed, may be uncomfortable to sit. It may be hard to get in and out of a car as you're going home from the hospital to that first pediatrician appointment. And those body changes for sure. So yes, absolutely. Like, I was so glad that one of my friends told me before I went into the hospital, and I became a parent before I became a doula, and I knew nothing. And she said, like, you're going to need to pack those maternity clothes because
Yes.
right after birth, your body looks more like it's 5 or 6 months pregnant, because it just takes some time for your uterus to return to its normal size, and all those changes that your body has spent 9 months moving through takes a long time for them to go in the other direction. And then just not feeling like myself. Gosh, I think any new parent, birthing parents or partners, can relate to that, just because you've gone through this massive physical experience. You have this brand new baby who you're trying to figure out, and that can be really overwhelming. Those early effects of cumulative fatigue are setting in. And so if you just find yourself in those early days thinking, what in the world have we done? Just
what did we do?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And they allowed me to take a whole human being home with me from the hospital without a manual. Like, did anyone check on this before they sent me?
Did we miss a step in the discharge process?
I was also in a training one time on, pregnancy and postpartum. And in that, the presenter shared that the hormones that increase over 9 months, as soon as that baby comes out, they go to pre-pregnancy levels, like immediately. And so I think that not feeling like myself, that's some like physiological information and biological information that may help you understand why it's so nutty. It's that like, oh, this gradual incline was a sharp decline all at once. And there's no physical specimen that can absorb that in step, right? Like in stride, that feels okay. Any change that's that sharp and sudden is going to be disorienting, in addition to taking care of the baby.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, Stephanie. I think that's a perfect analogy. Like, you just had a huge workout. And so what we want to do is turn around and go to sleep, right? Like, you're exhausted. And instead you have a nurse who's bringing you this baby that's not sleeping. And that, like, you now, it's this quick, it's a very like fast, it's no longer just about you. You have someone else to take care of too, even though you are completely exhausted and your body is kind of a hot mess at that point too. So,
yeah. And then layer on top of that breastfeeding and those early moments. And even if everything gets off to a really good start, still just the physical change. And if it's your first baby, it's just a brand new experience. And you can take the classes, you can read the books, you can watch the videos, but it's just hard to imagine what that experience is going to feel like, not only physically, but emotionally. Yeah, absolutely. And so just, we just encourage you to anticipate that this is really a time in so many ways to give yourself grace, give yourself time, just try to bring in all the patience as you're moving through so many changes in those early days. Just, real quick, again, to touch on the physical recovery, with a C-section, that's a major abdominal surgery, and about a third of births, take place via C-section. And even recovery from a vaginal delivery, there's some complications that can sometimes occur. And in either of those routes, it's just going to require some extra rest and recuperation to get up to a point where, your physical strength allows you to be up and moving around, in the ways that you're used to. And then in rare cases, women experience a traumatic birth. And we think it's important to note that the definition of a traumatic birth is a birth that feels traumatic to you. There's no sort of like, clinical threshold of validation that you have to cross. If something in your experience feels like it was traumatic, then it was, and you deserve a lot of support around that. So, if you're feeling any sort of, like that processing needs to occur after, we just really encourage you to reach out, and we'll talk about lots of resources that can help with that. But, to your medical team, to a therapist, to a doula, people are there for you and have good training around traumatic birth and are eager to help you with that. So again, we hope that this is not part of your experience, but just want to normalize that sometimes, a support network is needed right from the beginning to get things off to a good start.
Will you talk a little bit, just in case there is somebody here who's at like the very beginning of pregnancy, maybe they're the first in their friends to get pregnant. Will you talk about C-section recovery? Because I think for people that don't have a lot of friends that have had babies yet, or like, there's just not a lot of girl cousins in their family. There are people that haven't heard what a C-section recovery is like and what a lot of those recommendations around rest are. So hearing that may be beneficial.
Sure. Yeah, I've had some interesting conversations with physical therapists about that. And
Okay.
they've talked about how, any other surgery in your body, like if you have knee surgery, shoulder surgery, you're going to be sent home with a prescription for physical therapy and a lot of restrictions around
Uh-huh.
what you're meant to be not doing for some period
Yes.
of time. Whereas with the C-section, you're given a baby and,
Uh-huh.
and sent home,
Uh-huh.
without a lot of guidance around what that looks like. And so not only are you trying to recover from that major surgery, but you're also doing it on very little sleep and with the physical demands of caring for a newborn. And, often the advice is not to lift anything heavier than your baby, which can be hard because we're all used to doing a lot of things as moms.
And we don't realize how many things are 10 pounds
Right.
or
Exactly.
like how much your groceries weigh or things like that.
Yes, exactly. A
Mhm.
basket of laundry,
Yes.
especially if you have stairs in your house, all those
Yes.
things.
I was just going to say stairs.
Stairs.
Yeah. Avoiding stairs. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a kind of an expression, but it's really like a bit of advice that I think is really sound for those early days, whether or not you had a C-section, that your first week should be spent in bed. Your only job is resting and caring for your newborn. The second week should be on bed, so to speak. So, maybe on your couch, on, kind of just in a soft, relaxing place. And that third week to be near bed. So, maybe you can take the dog out for a quick walk if you feel up to it, maybe a very quick errand, but really we want you to be near a place where you can be getting a lot of rest. So, there's so
Awesome.
much pressure, I think, in our society to bounce back, get going, get up and out.
And do all the things.
All
Yeah.
the things. So
Mhm.
we're gonna today wave our flag and say, do the opposite. Take care of
Yeah.
yourself, really, really rest, and the rest can wait.
Yeah.
Awesome. Want me to head to the next slide?
Yeah, let's do. So sleep deprivation, this falls into that bucket of things that really every new parent experiences. And again, we're not trying to scare anybody or paint a picture of how rough this is going to be, but our intention here is just to, talk about what biological infant sleep looks like and know that you're not alone in these early months where it feels really hard. And we hope that you can anticipate, lining up some support that would feel most helpful to you, just knowing that you are going to be going through your days feeling pretty tired. And you don't have to really touch on these points, but just that loss of sleep really does have true measured impacts on your physical and mental health. And bringing home a new baby means that your family sleep is going to change, not just for a very short time, but often for quite a bit of time. And again, just normalizing the fact that at 12 months, 43% of babies still wake during the night. We don't want you to dread this first year of life, but just that, there's always that question out there: is your baby sleeping through the night? Probably not, is the answer, the honest answer for most people. So it's easy to feel that sense of isolation, like I'm the only one up. I remember when my first baby was born, she was a really terrible sleeper. When the sun would start to set each night, I would feel this sense of dread coming in. I would just feel it physically, feeling like, oh, I have to do this again. But it did pass, and now she's a great sleeper, and every parent can have some sort of story about how that felt in those early months. So it is a phase. It's very real though, so it is a time where all the support that you can muster around that is really helpful.
I saw something online once, and I think we've posted it now quite a while ago on our own social media, but it was a mom overnight in the nursery with just a very low light on and her phone while she was breastfeeding or rocking her baby to sleep, and just a thought bubble about I feel so alone. But then the other picture was zoomed out and it was all of these houses in
With
the
all of
neighborhood
that.
and then in the city, yes, with a light on, and representative of exactly what you just said, Kathleen, which is you're not the only one. It may feel like it, and I'm not trying to say that knowing that immediately cuts against feeling like that, but sometimes that knowledge can alleviate a little bit of that emotional burden, that it's not only you, and it's not your fault or your problem. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Half almost of babies are not sleeping through the night, so it must be a baby thing.
I think too, keeping that mind frame of this is temporary, they are only this small for such a short amount of time. I think that adage of the days are long but the years are short kind of deal, and I think trying to keep that mind frame when you are in the middle of the night with your child feeling alone, remembering to this is temporary, this is a stage of the game kind of a deal, and that we will get past it at some point, right?
Yeah. And another tip that you know, my mom is really like, to me, almost like this OG informal therapist, because she's not professionally a therapist, but is so smart about all of these things. She always taught my sister and I, like, if you are having a bad night, you're awake in the middle of the night, your thoughts aren't going to be normal. So have your thoughts. It's okay. You're not going to be able to turn off your brain, but reevaluate in the morning. Don't subscribe or prescribe to anything in the middle of the night. Just say, like, in the morning, I'll figure this out. In the morning, I'll reassess. And I think that can be really powerful for moms too, because there are going to be a lot of those nights that they're awake, but reevaluate how you feel about yourself as a mom. Reevaluate how parenthood is going in the morning. Which doesn't mean, again, that it's all going to be alleviated, but when that sun is up, it is going to feel different.
Way different. Yeah. It's a great point.
All right.
Okay. Next slide.
Yes, please.
I think so. Oh, yay. Me. Here we go. So I think, like, talking about all the physical changes and the sleep deprivation obviously moves right into the fact that emotionally, right, we're going to feel very different. It goes back to that first slide that just said, I don't feel like myself. Acknowledging that we've had a major life change and we're kind of, the family is in transition at this point. I think we wanted to touch on, sometimes our mood can be a little off. How about that? And that there are mood and anxiety disorders that are accompanying this whole period of life as well. But for the big piece of it is that baby blues, I think this is a great statistic that Kathleen put on here, that 80 to 90% of new moms, you're probably going to feel that. You're going to be super emotional. You're going to be a little bit more weepy. I had this conversation with a client not too long ago where it's like the baby leaves the womb and your eyes don't stop watering. Like, for whatever reason, it's like you fall in love almost instantly, and then these emotions are so big. And so remembering that this is a normal piece of it, and that it usually resolves itself in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Plus, going back to what Kathleen said about sleep deprivation, everything's going to be a little bit out of whack when we're not sleeping well.
Or a lot out of whack.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. A lot out of whack.
Yeah, and I think too, a big piece of this too is just acknowledging, right? Like, continuing to acknowledge and have some self-talk with yourself too. Yes. This is all new. Everything's changing. Like, we're going to need some time for everything to smooth out and figure out what the new routine looks like, right? For mom, dad, whoever else is in the house, those kinds of things. Yep. 1 in 5 women will experience a mood or anxiety disorder as well, with during pregnancy, after, and if you have a history, let's say you have a history of depression or anxiety, your risk is going to be a little bit higher in regards to this period of time as well. And I think it's good there too that we put on there, like, it's definitely higher. 1 in 5 women, it's higher because, again, Kathleen kind of talked about this at the beginning. These are the things that we don't necessarily always talk about, right, at the front end of all of this. And so then when it is happening to you and you are feeling low or anxious, and it's starting to affect functioning, right, like you said it too, Stephanie, we start to look at ourselves as like, something's wrong with me. I'm not a good mom. Why am I not handling this well? And instead of reaching out, then we do kind of stay isolated with ourselves because everybody else looks like they're handling it great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to note here too, that these perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, a lot of people say, like, well, but my baby's 9 months old. Is this something that still could impact me? And they say like up to 1 year. I actually think until up to 2 years is a better timeline to allow yourself. But then even if something sets in with like an overwhelming sense of dread or anxiety when your kiddo is 3 or 4, like, it doesn't matter if it counts as PMADs or not. Just, it's what you're experiencing. It's valid and help is out there. But as far as like that timeline, 2 years.
Oh, for sure. Well, and then like you have to factor in too, if you have another child as well. So like,
or another pregnancy.
100%.
You know, so even if it was you miscarried, you were unable to carry till term, it's still your body going through that process, which includes all of the physical and hormonal changes that will subject you to being vulnerable to anxiety, depression, OCD, etc.
Absolutely. I think it's important too to talk about the two differences here too, like the baby blues. You're probably going to be weepy, really emotional, tired, overwhelmed, but you're still functioning
Uh-huh.
in life. And
Yes.
usually it kind of resolves in that first couple of weeks. Where maybe we get a little bit more concerned is when you're not functioning as well and you've lost interest in things that you previously enjoyed, maybe a flatter affect. Your sleep disruptions are beyond what the baby actually needs. Maybe you're struggling to emotionally connect with baby or with your partner. So those are kind of the risk factors more that we want to really highlight and then say, like, that's the time to talk to your OB. That's the time to maybe look for a maternal mental health, wellness group like Marble. Those kinds of things, really reaching out even to your support, just your support system, whether that's like moms, sisters, cousins, friends, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Or, who moms see the most often is pediatrician, right? Like you're going in for that baby check so constantly. And luckily now pediatricians are coming around to being the screeners for this for moms, since they actually get eyes on mom more than OB. And so if you didn't really like your OB, unfortunately, or you don't have the energy to pick up the phone to call them or send a portal message, which if you're experiencing depression, like is a very likely reality, but you're getting out the door to get your baby's doctor's appointment, bring it up to the pediatrician. They'll be able to direct you at least.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Absolutely. Do you mind going to the next one? Because I think we talked about risk factors on that.
Perfect.
So like we talked about, so if you have a history of depression or anxiety, you're more than likely going to be a little bit higher risk for this. Factoring in, are other things stressful in your life right now too? Whatever that may look like. Is there financial issues? Are there job changes within the family? Those kinds of things. Looking at your social support too, right? Like there's something to be said about it takes a village. When we're talking about raising children. And I think this early stage of motherhood, like this is where it's really, really important to have those people that you can lean on. And when you have questions, right, like if you're not at the pediatrician's office or the OB, somebody who maybe is a few steps ahead of you in this child rearing game, that you can reach out and say, hey, does this seem normal? Or am I doing this right? Or do you have suggestions? Just having someone to say, I am exhausted. Right? Like, and just acknowledging that life is really hard right now. I think also looking at baby, how's baby doing? Like, do you have a more colicky baby, or like, is baby really up more than usual at night? Those kinds of things too. And so I think, looking at the overall picture too, as to what's going on, all of these things are going to play into perinatal mood and anxiety disorders for sure. We talked a lot about, Kathleen and I did, how important it is to point out to partners and the dads, like they can experience these pieces too. I'll be very honest. I remember having our second child and my husband looking at me and just saying, what did we do? Like, what is happening right now? And and that was even on baby number 2, where we had some idea of what was coming. And so I think having that check in too with your partner. We talk about outside support systems, but from a standpoint of looking at your partner in this, and I think we talk about it a little bit further, but one of the most stressful moments for a marriage or committed relationship is this birth of this first child. And we see marital decline in satisfaction happen. And so things have changed. We've changed the dynamic from there's 2 of us to now we have this other person who has really high needs too, that we're both focused on. And so remembering that our greatest support is a person who's in this with us, right? And making sure that we're checking in with each other too, like, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on with you today? And trying to stay connected that way as well.
Yep. And just to put a number on dads with postpartum, I think the reported level is, you guys, I'm so bad at numbers. I was going to say 30%, but then I was like, no, it might be 10%, but either way, also underreported.
Sure.
And 10% is, I think, higher than anybody would have assumed. And it's probably closer to 30 to 40%. So that's very real. So if your partner is struggling and you're just like, dude, pull it together. I was the one that labored and delivered, you know, it can be very real for them too. And in
But I
allowing
think we
them,
negate.
go ahead.
No, just that point where you're talking about, like, they did labor and deliver. I think we negate the fact that he had to sit and watch
Yes,
this person that he loves do this. And especially if there was trauma or complications,
correct.
to be that person who is helpless
Yep.
next to you as
Yep.
well. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much there.
Or in the instance that they have to choose, that the doctor says, if this, you know, if
100%.
this doesn't go well, do you want us to save your wife or your baby?
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think there's something to be said there. It'd be interesting to really talk to dads. Like, I don't know that dads are necessarily talking about these kinds of things or saying, like, because it takes a lot to be vulnerable and say that was
Yes.
really hard to watch my wife
Yes.
go through, or have them like wheel her out immediately for an
Mhm.
emergency C-section, and to say what that feeling was like, and then
Mhm.
to be immediately into recovery and to this child, and life is overwhelming now. So yeah, I think there's a lot there.
Mhm. Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah, you're good, Steph. You can go. Thank you.
Okay.
I think this is something Kathleen and I talked a lot about, like this idea of, I'm a mom now, and yet I don't know, like, what is my place in this world now? Like,
Mhm.
I wasn't before, and now I am, and all of these expectations that we have for ourselves, and then that really society has for us as
Mhm.
well. I think I have a common theme right now with a lot of my clients. I feel like with very young children, that this is a, like, what am I now? Like, what am I doing? How do I view myself? How does the world view me? So
Yeah.
you can get stuff on the next
Yeah.
one.
I always tell my clients that motherhood, or parenthood really, is the single biggest permanent change nobody prepares you for.
100%.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is, Kathleen, do you want to speak to this a little bit? I feel like you did a really good job with this one. So if you wanna go
Sure.
ahead.
So there's this interesting study talking about the pieces of our identity that we each hold, you know, independent of motherhood. Just everyone in the world sees themselves in different ways. And I think it's neat to visualize that as a pie chart. And this could even be,
Cool.
for anyone watching, kind of an independent exercise that someday you may want to try out. Like, if you think of, you know, I need to add up to 100% today, how would I fill in those pieces? And, you know, in this pie chart, we just gave some examples of pieces that you may feel like, but you may have other pieces of your identity too. But in this study, it talked about how, for moms who are about to give birth, during pregnancy, they, you know, kind of came up with how they assign those pieces of their identity. And on average, the average number was that 34% of their identity was assigned to being a partner. After birth, even 1 year and 18 months after giving birth, guess what number took the 34% slot? Being a mom. And so the study isn't exactly saying that the child replaces the partner in that identity pie chart, but I think it's interesting to look at sort of that idea of replacement, or like what bubbles up to be the most dominant piece of one's identity. Again, that's on average. If you have had a baby a year ago and you don't feel like your portions of the pie are the same, that's totally fine. This is not like what it should be by any means.
Correct.
It's just an average, you know, finding from this study. And it is just interesting that, you know, so much changes in that first year and beyond of having a baby. And this isn't something that a lot of us are kind of prompted to think about. And like, whatever your pie chart looks like before birth, whatever your pie chart looks like after birth, that's totally fine. It's just kind of interesting to anticipate how, when you add in being a mother, other things have to shrink.
Right.
Or think about how that might feel, you know, in terms of those other relationships with your partner, with your friends, with your coworkers, you know, with your siblings, with your parents. It all changes. And on any given day, some portions may feel bigger and some may feel smaller. But it's just, I think, helpful to anticipate how almost definitely the percentage of your identity that you assign to be a partner is going to shrink once you bring in another chunk of the pie. And so it can be helpful in advance if possible, or in the midst of it if not, just to realize, like, okay, this is happening. And let's talk about what this feels like for each of us.
Yes. Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, we talked a lot about that it's very fluid, don't you think, Kathleen? That because it's it's going to shift as the child gets older too, and gets more independent and hits different developmental stages too.
Yeah.
So it's
Yes.
yeah, we're really just looking at that postpartum stage right now, but it is something to think about, that like it's constantly shifting and moving kind of as you move through this journey of parenthood.
Yeah, for sure.
But I also think it's, and this is a really good therapy conversation, but like you said, Kathleen, it can be fluid. And so like what embracing that fluidity will do for your emotional and mental health, but also realizing like you do have some control here, right? Because I think part of a lot of times the fourth trimester is that feeling of being out of control. And those first 3 months in particular are not the time to necessarily like overhaul how you're acting as a sister right now or anything like that. But beyond that, as things start to become a little bit more predictable, as there's a little bit more understanding of your baby's needs and behaviors, you do have the power to influence this a little bit and get a little bit more chunk of the pie back in being a partner. And like, so it doesn't have to be just stagnant. You do have the ability to thrive in all of these, probably rarely feeling like you're thriving in all of them as at a long term while your kids are little, but you can have really good days that you feel like this is operating pretty well. And partnering with somebody, like I said, a therapist, a postpartum doula, can be a really good way to get some of those techniques so you can feel like that in the different identity buckets of your life.
And I think also good to note that a smaller chunk of the pie doesn't mean a smaller feeling of love or care. You know, just because like, oh, I don't have time to think about planning a weekly date night with my partner. You know, just because you're thinking about that relationship in a different way doesn't mean that, you know, your underlying love and care for someone diminishes by any means. But
that's a great point. Yeah, which I think that's perfect. Steph, will you go into the next slide for me? I think too, like what you said, Steph, is that we do have some control over that. And so what it essentially, like, you're looking at being a little bit more intentional in some areas too. And I think one of them is that marriage relationship change, but really the marriage, one of the largest stressors for a marriage is the birth of the first child. It's like there's research, Gottman's done research. I mean, it was something really high too. It was like 68% or something to that effect, that people feel like dissatisfaction in their marriage. And if you think about it, like that birth of that first child changes everything. It's like obviously emotional ties, but like financially, physically, as you're recovering after the birth of your child, like, let's be honest, the sex life is going to change. And so you also are looking to, when you look at affirmation or you look at the different love languages we have with our partners, a lot of that focus has shifted over to baby, right? And I know I've heard themes with dads too, like, well, you were mine first, or, you know, like, I used to get this attention. Well, it's a complete transition as we try and go from 2 people's needs to 3 people's needs. And that's like not even talking about if there is another child in the house too. Like the whole thing is just a big transition. And so I think we have to be very gentle with ourselves and with our partner too. A big thing we want to make sure that's still happening in the marriage is a lot of positivity. And when you have this much change, sometimes it feels negative. And if we latch on to that, then it can look, the whole dynamic of that relationship can shift negative. So we want to stay positive. So you want to be very gentle. Like we talked about earlier, the lack of sleep is going to be huge with your emotional regulation, right? So making sure that we're checking in with our partner. And if we can, I think a big piece of it too is really looking, where can we be a team? Can we be a team at night? Can you sleep through the first feeding and maybe I can do the second? Or if you're breastfeeding, maybe when you're done nursing, then you can go back to sleep and I can change baby and put baby back down. So looking for places where we can be a team together. I do think it's really, really important to do daily check-ins with each other. And to really be asking that question, how are you today? Like, how is your heart? How are your emotions today? Like, this is a big change for all of us. So really trying to tap into our partner just to see how they're doing so that you're both kind of staying on that same level. And then this is the really hard part there at the bottom where it says carve out small amounts of time for one another. You know, we can get into this thought pattern of like, well, there is no time. I have to do all of these things. Actually, this should be I feel like a priority on when you go to make your to-do list for the day and you're doing all the things, where do we have a few minutes to ourselves, even if it's 10 minutes, even if it's
Mhm.
15 minutes, to really just have moments together, because you got into this together. You're
Mhm.
now, up to your eyeballs together
Mhm.
in parenthood and all of the things. So we want to try and stay as connected as
Mhm.
possible. And it takes being very intentional with our partner for sure.
Yeah. And I would recommend the phones are down during this time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So sitting next to
absolutely.
each other scrolling doesn't quite count
No.
as that level of quality time that's going to allow you to be pouring into the relationship to keep you going in this new dynamic of a family of 3 or 4 or whatever it is that
Yeah.
baby turned you into.
Yeah, and I think too, like setting realistic expectations in the postpartum, and I think that's why it's really good to be having these conversations prior to being in postpartum, really talking with your partner. What do we want it to look like? Where can we maybe simplify things in this next year so that we can make sure we're taking care of each other
Mhm.
while we also take care of this new baby, and we kind of figure out what the new normal looks like for us? What are routines maybe that can shift just a little bit,
Yeah.
or what's really important to you that we want to make sure that you're still getting in your day, like whether that's like dad's 6 a.m. workout or something.
Mhm.
Those
Mhm.
pieces are things that, like, where can we give a little bit to make it simpler, and then what do we not want to give up? And but having those conversations prior to getting into the actual postpartum time period, I think, is really
Yep.
important.
Huge.
One last thing I want to throw in
Yep.
here. Kara and I were talking about how we really encourage couples to try your best not to keep score.
Mm.
And that
Yes,
Mhm.
thank you, Kathleen.
you
Yes.
know, most new parents could tell you in the last 24 hours who
Yeah.
changed how many
Who
diapers.
changed what
Uh-huh.
diapers? Yeah, who was up more at
Uh-huh.
night? 100.
And I really think it's something you have to intentionally fight against, because
Yes.
it can feel really normal just to take note and remember and dwell on those things. So
Mhm.
to whatever extent you can remind yourself, like, yes, there will be days where I feel like I'm picking up the slack, I'm doing more of the job. If you feel that, express that kindly, and
Yeah.
talk about how, tomorrow it would be really great if we could switch and you could do the bulk of X, Y, or Z so
Mhm.
I could get an extra nap, whatever.
Yeah.
But rather than just letting that, kind of fester on the
Fester.
inside, it's a great thing to have open communication around to help
Yeah.
set those expectations for yourself and how you operate as a couple.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
And then, so we've talked a little bit about some things to expect, some things you may experience, and so now we want to get into the what to do with that
Mhm.
phase of this. So
Mhm.
we're going to talk a little bit about establishing routines and some daily goals, but this part, like, see it in really big print with realistic expectations. We don't want you to see this list and think, oh great, now I have to check off all these things in a day too. Just some gentle reminders of kind of ideal situations or actions that you can take to really take care of yourself and your needs during this postpartum period. So the first one is maximize rest. So we talked about sleep deprivation. You may hear people say sleep when the baby sleeps. If you can, great, and we encourage that, but we also know that that doesn't always feel possible. So we want you to think about maximizing rest, maybe even
Great.
more than sleep. And some days if your baby's taking naps in 2.5 hour chunks and you can really go in and close your eyes for 2 hours, amazing. Other days, if your baby's just feeling really fussy, going through a growth spurt, eating constantly, and when you put that baby down for a nap, you're going to get 20 minutes if you're lucky. If you're faced with the choice of, I can fold this laundry and empty the dishwasher, or I can lie down with my head
That
flat on the bed and scroll through my phone or listen to a couple favorite songs till the baby wakes up, we encourage you to choose that.
Yes.
Even if it's not sleep, if you can just kind of take yourself off the clock for a minute, physically lie down if you can, or be in a comfortable chair, do something that relaxes and allows yourself to kind of rest and disconnect for just a minute. Just find those little snippets, like the
Yeah.
micro rest, even if
Yeah.
the idea of a nap seems unattainable
Yeah.
for a day.
Turn off the energy faucet.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Mhm.
Same for eating and drinking. This is not the time for 3-course meals and gourmet dinners, but we encourage you to eat something and drink
Yes.
water every day.
Yes.
I preach to all my doula clients about the wonders of one-handed snacks. Things
Yes.
like, muffins, cut up fruit, like apple slices, pieces of cheese, like,
Mhm.
some rolled up lunch meat, anything that you can eat with one hand while you're walking around with a baby or feeding a
Mhm.
baby. That can just help make sure that you're getting some extra calories and nutrition into your day. Most hospitals send moms home with those huge water cups with the
Yeah.
straw on top. And that's
Yeah.
a great way to just make sure that you are kind of generally speaking, monitoring your hydration, because if you are breastfeeding, even if you're not, just like going through those hormonal changes, you're sweating a lot, you're,
Yes.
a lot of fluids leaving your body, you're going to be thirsty and you're going to need to be replenishing that liquid.
Yeah.
So just, make drinking a priority, make sure that you're eating as well.
Yeah. I also, just about the water really quickly, because this is one of my like brands as a therapist, is talking about water to everyone, but moms in particular. But also I learned one time that the cells in your brain use 2 times the amount of energy as the cells in your body. And water is basically the equivalent of diesel fuel for your brain. And if you think about how much brain power moms are using and how mentally foggy they feel, like a glass of water or 2 glasses of water could be an easy difference maker, right?
Yeah.
Again, none of these things are going to be the thing that alleviates all of this and makes you feel like you found a magic pill. But so many moms that I talk to, personal life or professionally, are just like, I just need something like easy that I know works, right? Like I just need a little bit of help. And I'm telling you, a glass of water can often be that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Hygiene routine, you'll hear any mom talk about how many days went by without a shower. That's probably going to happen. So if that's off the table, that's fine. But if you can put the baby down and just take a minute to wash your hands, wash your face, put on a really nice smelling lotion and just like savor that for a minute. Just those little steps to, brush your hair, brush your teeth, make yourself kind of like feel a little more human in micro bursts as you can through the day.
Yeah.
Gentle exercise or movement. Please, please, please shut out any societal noise about having your body bounce back. No, none of that. We're just talking about any way to really focus on your mental health through some gentle movement or exercise. So that could be a little bit of stretching, a little yoga, if that's something you enjoy. As you feel ready for it, walking around the block or just to the end of your block at first. And then as you build up to it, maybe walking with your baby in a stroller or a carrier, just to have that connection between your body and your brain again. Adult interaction is huge. So, if there's someone physically with you in your house, wonderful. And you can have those conversations. But if not, think about your broader support circle too. Like I like to give the example of when I had my first baby. I had a good friend who had her first baby 3 weeks before. And during the night when that isolation and dread was hitting hard, we would text each other as we were awake at, the middle of the night for feedings. And it was rarely that we were awake at the same time, but if I would wake up for feeding and see that I had a text on my phone from her, it felt like a little gift and felt like a connection to the world. And I'd drop back a text, and that way she would see it when she woke up. And it just made the whole experience feel much, much, much less isolating. So think about who are those friends where even if they're not going to see it till morning, you can shoot them a text at 2 a.m. and just say like, oh, rough night. And they'll get back to you when they're awake and say like, I'm here for you. What do you need? And then streamlining household tasks. We just encourage you to see this as a season to pull out all the stops to bring in whatever support you can. And if there's any budget flexibility that allows for, grocery delivery, someone to mow the lawn, any help cleaning the house, wonderful. And if not, that's okay too. There are other ways to find support just with your network. People love to say to anyone experiencing a big life transition, let me know if you need anything. And if you can just think through some ways that you could say, actually, yes, whether it's, an electronic.
Here's what I need.
Yeah. Or like a list stuck to your fridge, like here's some easy ways to help. If you come over, just asking a neighbor if they could roll your trash can down to the end of the street on trash night. Little things make such a difference, not only in terms of taking a task off your plate, but just feeling that love and support from your community.
Well, and I think this really blends the two, adult interaction and support from your network, right? Like, can you keep me company and fold laundry? Yes. Can you like come keep me company and like eat together? Yeah. Will you bring over lunch? Yeah. And people just don't know what you need. And there's also a lot of people who don't want to intrude if you've had a new baby. Like there's a lot of mixed messages about how to be a helpful, supportive person. And so while it sucks what I'm going to say next, I mean it in a way that's going to be helpful. You have to ask for what you need.
That's what I was going to say too, Stephanie. Yes. And I think that's something that we society in general you're supposed to have everything together. You're supposed to be able to do it all. Actually, you're not, and it's okay. I can remember I had a really good friend who would say, I'm going to come over and hold the baby. Why don't you go lay down? And I remember being like, oh, you don't have to do that. And she's like, I know I don't have to do it, but I want to come do it. One, I want to hug your baby, but also you need to lay down. And it was like, it literally was a gift from heaven for sure. So Yeah.
But another example, I have a friend that just had a second baby and she's like, I hate the meal trains that people have started. I don't want anything, like, leave me alone. So if someone's trying to be helpful, they have 4 friends, all with different, and then I saw a TikTok the other day that was pissed me off big time because it was about like somebody's people like offering to help, and they were like, stop offering to help. You should just say, and I was like, this is why no one offers to help, because you get in trouble. And so we've unfortunately kind of created this really weird world. So I say to you, the people that love you will help you. Just tell them how they can help.
Yeah. Give them some direction. Absolutely.
Yes, because it's lovely. You had a friend that said like, she was oriented to postpartum, right?
Yep.
There are other people in your life that definitely can help, just literally don't know what you need or want.
Need some direction.
And even if they can't do it that day, it might be like, I can't come over after work today or tomorrow, but I have all weekend free. Can I come over then? Is there something else I can do? So you just have to communicate it and people will fill in from there, but you do have to ask for the help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this is building that village, right? Like Kathleen and I talked a lot about making sure that you really have those people, like Steph, we're talking about giving people direction. There are people in your life who want to support you. And so who are those people? Going ahead and identifying them, and maybe identifying them prior to the postpartum, so that you kind of have an idea of like, okay, if such and such, I know who I'm reaching out to. Obviously, first and foremost is your partner. I think sometimes we overlook them with the keeping score, and we forget that we're all on the same team here with one united goal. And so making sure, again, going back to that check-in, who is the birth team? Will you have a postpartum doula? And then also going down to like therapist, who are your medical providers, and really like thinking through, who are the people that I can reach out to for help? Lactation consultants. It's amazing to me, and Kathleen, you can speak to this because you actually are a doula, how much support is out there. I feel like now, prior to when I had my kids, there are a lot of doulas. There are a lot of nursing resources for you. Pelvic floor, we had somebody come in and talk to the practice, which was amazing. There's so many pieces here that you can really build a really good support team during this postpartum, depending on how you're feeling or what's happening with you and your baby, if that makes sense. So again, not being afraid to reach out and ask for help, I think is a big piece of it too. I also, back on that with the support and that establishing routines, when you do feel well enough, I do think it's important to get out of the house.
Yes,
you can. And the sooner you do it, I feel like the more successful sometimes we are, where we don't get isolated, if that makes sense. So if you have a good friend's house that you can go to, that you feel comfortable just doing a short visit or something to that effect, but like baby steps. I think Kathleen, you even talked about just getting outside the house and doing a walk around the block with the baby if you feel comfortable, but making sure that we are getting outside of the house and interacting back with the real world too, I think is really important when we look at mood disorders.
Yeah, even like if you have to go to Starbucks and go inside to order your drink, right? But like if that's your interaction and just getting outside of the house, very similarly to the thoughts that don't go well at night, if you're inside of your own 4 walls too many days in a row, your brain also warps a little bit. And as soon as you're outside, you're just like, oh, there's that big breath that I was looking for. And the library is another great place, and I'm sure we're going to get to a slide maybe on that, but like, I always like to encourage people during pregnancy, when you have a little bit more energy and wherewithal to you, to seek out what are the options around you for when you do feel well enough, or your baby is that age, right? So is there like a mommy and me music class or yoga class, or, and the libraries are such a great resource for all of that, but bookstores have a lot, in St. Louis, there's tons of stuff, and those places those places are also really good about understanding like a mom can't commit. So it's just like, if you can make it, you can make it. If not, it's not like you paid for a spot and now you're out of $35
right,
or whatever it is.
And I think too, this is a good place too to talk a little bit about support groups too, because there's a
Yes.
lot of, we know mothers of preschoolers. I know a lot of communities have like mommy and me kind of groups. And so really maybe just taking a peek, because sometimes being with other people who are in the same
Yep.
state of the game as you is a good, it normalizes, it validates, and it just gives you people to interact who really understand where you're at right now. Like what it's like to be up all night with a child, those small things that you can really relate to and find support that way too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we just wanted to mention that all these types of providers and many more are out there. As a postpartum doula, like, almost anytime I introduce myself to someone new, they ask what I do, and I tell them, the answer is, oh, I wish I'd known that that was a thing when I had a baby. And I'm sure it's the same for, I know pelvic floor physical therapists. That's a service that I wish every new mom was told about. And chiropractors who work not only with moms, but babies. And just know that whatever need or sort of gap you're feeling, just know that there are providers out there who are eager to help you and have, specialty in working with brand new moms and brand new babies. So, you can always reach out, and we're happy to share recommendations on trusted partners in the community who offer all these services.
Night nurses are becoming something people use a lot more too. And, if you're breastfeeding, that's not the same intervention as if it's a bottle feeding service opportunity, but that's something that is helping a lot of people and becoming much more common as well.
Yeah. And then our next slide here, just again, like thinking about, that support team in kind of a different way. So more like your village, like Cara was mentioning, those support groups. And here in St. Louis, we have a wonderful resource called the Moms Line. That's a free resource for peer phone support, but also in person and Zoom groups. Postpartum Support International offers really specialized groups. So there's kind of a group for any sort of life situation, which is really wonderful. But then also just the people, like we put partner on this list too, just as a reminder. You are the team, you're the immediate team, and your first job is to take care of each other and your baby. But that friend network, work colleagues, I think is an important group to consider if you are returning to work. And just think, like find your allies and find your supporters. Maybe they're, other moms as well, but they don't have to be. Like, lots of people have really good empathy for this experience, whether or not they've had a baby themselves. So just think about like who can be looking out for you, who can be, a safe space on a day where you just need to vent or you're so exhausted and can't carry on. Your work colleagues who you're going to be spending a lot of time with can really be a great support for you as well.
You know what another good activity can be is, even if you have a baby who obviously like can't get out of the stroller, go up to the park, right? Like
100%.
Your kid doesn't have to be on the playground in order for you to be able to go to the park, but that's a place to find moms that are around and that you can talk to, right? And Cara, to your point earlier about somebody who's a little bit further ahead of you, like they'll be able to talk to you about like, you'll get to the stage where your kiddo can run around and play. And like, I remember, and it sucks, and you'll make it. And so if you are really struggling to find something, like think about where moms go, and it's okay if your kiddo is not at that stage yet, because a mom is a mom.
Absolutely. I agree completely. Yep.
And then these last two slides, we really just wanted to pop on the screen as a preview, but wanted to share that, with registration, you're going to get a little PDF with this exact text. So we wanted to save it just as like conversation starters for you and your partner, your immediate household family, just with the hope that you can have some of these conversations before that baby arrives, or if your baby's already here, just it never hurts to kind of revisit, because it's so easy to have your own assumptions about the way things are going to go, and your partner is going to have his or her own set of assumptions about the way things are going to go, and there's going to be some overlap, and there's going to be some difference too. And so, maybe in your mind you thought like, I just really don't want any visitors at our house for the first week. I'm going to be figuring out breastfeeding. I want to be in bed like these people told me to be. Whereas your partner thought like, well, yeah, of course the grandparents are going to be here every day, and our best friends and our coworkers, and we'll host that barbecue next weekend. Like, if you could just have a conversation with
great
clarification. Yes.
And so that's kind of our goal with these questions, just to prompt those conversations, just thinking that whatever you can kind of hammer out ahead of time or as early as possible, the smoother things will go.
Awesome.
Anything else, Cara, that we wanted to bring up that we hadn't yet?
No, I think you did I think we covered everything we talked about, Kathleen. I do think going back and just being gentle, like not to scare you, but I think really just push the point of having discussions and really start to think about what will this time period look like for us, and just having the conversation on these questions, I think, can be huge. You don't have to have a like PDF plan set out, this is how it's going to go, but it's just more to really be thinking through, life is changing, things are going to look different for a while. So what can we do? What can the expectations be? What kind of support can we put in place? Which I think is great.
Thinking through things can just help a lot with the emotional impact of them later.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And as always, you know, we are here for you guys. So if you're watching this back later and you have questions, feel free to reach out. If you want to get started with us, obviously feel free to reach out. We have a maternal mental health team that are, you know, trained in pregnancy and postpartum. We all have birth trauma training. We have some therapists right now, Cara being one, who are about to start perinatal loss training to help people journey through that loss and the burden of that, you know, emotional experience. So here are a couple ways to reach out. You know, you can call us on the phone, 636-234-3052, by email at hello@marblewellness.com, or check out our website for more information on the services and all the things we offer, or to get in touch online. That would be www.marblewellness.com. We get back to you the same day or within one business day. So we try to be very responsive, understanding what it takes to make that first phone call. So please know you'll experience a warm voice on the other end of that communication. And even if we aren't the right fit, we will do as Kathleen said and connect you to other wonderful providers in the area. So however we can support you, please feel free to reach out and let us know how we can be part of that village, even if it's in a limited capacity. So we are here, and thank you so much for watching this. And we wish you the best in your 4th trimester journey. Cara and Kathleen, thank you guys so much for that. That was like a really coherent, clear training, but still, I think, very dynamic and had a lot of depth and width to it as far as the information that's really helpful. So thank you guys for your time this morning and sharing your expertise so generously.
This was fun.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation. This is great.
Yeah. All right. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll be seeing both of you soon, I'm sure. And to everyone watching, thank you so much, and best to all of you.
Bye.
Thank you.